Beautiful imagery, and certainly Karen picked up on the sort of pastoral imagery of I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. Is there any more beloved image of Christ than a good shepherd? There you did it already. You're way ahead of me. Thanks. It's so familiar, resonates with our psalm that's assigned for today, which we heard parts of in our litany. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. Or he shepherds his flock like the good shepherd. Conjures up stained glass images that perhaps some of you growing up in other churches with stained glass can remember imagery of stained glass windows of Jesus. Some of the earliest imagery we have of Jesus from ancient art is on tombs or relics. It's not images of a crucified or a cross. Instead, we have pictures of Jesus as a gentle shepherd. In fact, one of the earliest paintings that we have of him is of this young Jesus dressed in sort of a white tunic who has a lamb draped over his neck, which is classic art even today about Jesus. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Almost as if it paints a scene in which there can come no harm, isn't it? As if we have a good shepherd. Remember the movie of the Good Shepherd? It was a movie about CIA and how they were supposed to be protecting us. Sort of a twist on the theme, entering into this pastoral scene that seems to be so filled with beautiful imagery as Karen conjured up Ireland for us. Sort of under the protective wing of our parent again, it seems like. Trust and obey and everything will just turn out all right. But that's not quite how the passage goes. If you look with me in our gospel reading for today, there is no such world. And Jesus, having offered this tender image of safety, seems to move quickly to shatter the image. Enter the wolves, stage left. Exit the hired shepherds, stage right. We recall in the life of John's Christian community that was overshadowed by anxiety about persecution, fear of losing everything, of livelihood, of family relations, of community status. So much for green pastures, so much for still waters. Just didn't seem to be that way. The community to which John was writing was a flock under persecution. This was a shepherd with danger all around. Now, many of us might be feeling that same way, at least for the last several years, with the comparable crisis of security that we are experiencing ourselves as large and personal, profit-driven institutions figure out how to straighten out their bottom line. It usually means you're the bottom line. And your lives change to the benefit of a corporate coffer. There's foreclosures on homes. There's questions about health care, while some of us continue to struggle without it. Jobs continue to be shipped off to cheaper markets overseas. For more and more of us, the idyllic understanding of America as this haven, as this dream, has become a bit more of a struggle, hasn't it? That's the reality in which we live. You may be wondering, where's that good shepherd? I thought we had a good shepherd, especially in times like these. I want to make a few points about our passage today. And the first is to go along with that pastoral image, which is true, which gets lifted up earlier in our text and before our text. It's a word of comfort for those who are struggling, for those who are hurting. The sheep are not simply the shepherd's livelihood or the responsibility of the shepherd. They are his own. There's sort of a difference in that, isn't there? It's one thing that it might be anybody's dog or anybody's sheep. I think it's harder for us to relate to anybody's sheep or anybody's cat, because there's some folks who just don't like cats. But if it's your own, well, it's different. I grew up with cats. We had barn cats, and they would as soon take your eye out as they would let you pet them. I did not like cats, but now I have Bambi. How weird it is to be owned by a cat. And to know my own, and for my own to know me. It's a very different relationship. It's almost like the words of John's prologue coming up again, where it said, he came to that which was his own. Imagine that. We are his own. Unlike some nameless, faceless corporation which sees the flocks in terms of what they can get out of the flock, the shepherd cares deeply and invests in the flock. They're worth his life to him. And he will lay it down willingly. He even goes on to make pains to say, nobody's taking this from me. I'm giving it. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to pick it up. While this is not a promise of a pain-free life for the flock, it is a powerful assurance upon which we all count. This shepherd that guides us. We are not alone in any moment of this life or into the next. Amid so much that is impersonal and profit-driven in our lives, so much in which we often feel like a cog in the wheel, it's so wonderful to hear the shepherd say, "You're mine, and I'm yours, and I'll lay it on the line for you." God is with us. God will not turn from us. Paul Frost used to say, there's an old saying, if you can't sleep, don't count sheep. That's the wrong thing to count. Count on the shepherd, and you'll have his assurance. God cares for us. The image is like a shepherd caring for his own sheep. But this passage also comes very mixed, doesn't it? It seems like as soon as he says he's the good shepherd, all of a sudden there's talk about wolves. Can't we just stay in the pasture for a while? Can't we build higher fences? But all of a sudden there's wolves. And it seems to contain in it a call to Christ's church to be on a mission like his. We too are called to lead lives of seeing and caring that stand in contradiction to all that debases and dehumanizes us. We are, after all, not our own, but his. By baptism, we're called to live as Christ in our world. One of the other early saints said, they won't know him unless they see him in you. Or, he has no hands on earth but yours, no feet on earth but yours. We're not only the sheep of his flock, we are also to be the flock of the risen one and to show him forth in the world. It's been one of the themes I've been talking about since Easter, is show the resurrection. We are the risen appearance of Christ in the world. And what makes a pastor proud is when the flock seems to be doing some of these things, as we have been recently in our Alpha program. Terry's been talking about it recently, given the genuine welcome to some of our newcomers who happen to have been folks who've come to the building for 12-step programs, but are homeless, living along the creek here. And it's gratifying to hear, not just that they've come here, but that some of our guys have made them their own. And they themselves have gone to the creek bottom to check on their own, their flock. Yeah, it makes a pastor proud to not have to make them do it, but to see the connection between human beings and souls for whom Christ also died, and the church doing what the church should do. It makes me proud when the kids are engaged in mission trips like they're about to go on here in June and July, and they come back with changed perspectives about the poor, and don't see them as those people, but as people like us. The good shepherd, or the true shepherd, is the one who lays down his life for the sheep. We need to keep that straight. He's the one who brings them home. We're to follow, though, the shepherd into the world of lost sheep and scattered flocks. That's what we're supposed to do. We Easter Christians are to embody this committed, sacrificial way of living, following Christ's example of solidarity with those who are vulnerable in the world. Which means that we, as God's shepherd church, flock, if you will, must think beyond the role of the church as a refuge, which we, I think, in our congregation are particularly fond of, and I think we do particularly well. We're a refuge. Once you come into the doors, you get well loved up by the moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas of this congregation who will love you up because we're a refuge. A refuge for those who are battered and beaten in the world. We're a refuge for those who have gone into the world and taken things into their bodies that have turned in their own bodies and minds against them. And so we host 12-step groups for many folks in our community. It's an image that we're comfortable with, of being a refuge or a hospital for those that are ill, a place to which they receive care and love in the flock of the risen one. But as this particular flock of the risen one, we're also called to confront the wolves. That was the shepherd's job. Is the church adequately prepared and claiming its role outside of these walls, out in the world where the ravaging and terrorizing of sheep seems to be happening? Are we making visible the shepherd who confronts evil, who overturns the tables of the money changers and inequities of our world? I'd be remiss if we didn't pull our attention to verses 12 and 13 in our gospel for today. The parable of the hired hands. They flee when the wolves come. They see them coming and they run out the other way. Who's Jesus talking about? Well, it makes it very easy for us to immediately go back to the original Greek and see the conflict between the religious establishment and Jesus. And there's so much evidence in John's Gospel for the fact that the religious establishment was against Jesus, so clearly this is a religious establishment. But let's bring back again the story of the Passion narrative, which we just heard, just at the end of Lent, just at the end of the life of Jesus, who actually ended up fleeing when the shepherd was struck. His disciples. Those inner circle who swore on their life that they would give their lives were the ones to first flee when they came to arrest him in the garden. In fact, in Mark's Gospel, it said they were so desperate that one of them left with no clothes at all. Stripped bare by the wrestling that went on, he ran off naked. Wow. Fleeing. Most of all, we hear about Peter, of course, the chief disciple, Mr. Church, who himself not just flees in this first account, but hangs on the edge of the crowd, and when he gets identified, 3 times denies Jesus, saying, invoking a curse on himself, in the name of God, I don't even know this guy. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. As Christians, we love to sing about Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who cares for us and keeps us safe. But what of the lamb who identifies so much with the sheep that he shares our lot? The one who not only succumbs to the same dangers, but whose fate actually seems to depend on our choices. If you've ever read Henry Nouwen, he's one of my favorite authors, in his book, The Return of the Prodigal, it tells the story of the prodigal son. Remember that story in Luke's Gospel? We all know the story. The younger son wants his inheritance. He demands it of his father even before the father's dead. You can hear the insult in that, can't you? And the father says, all right. Gives him half of everything he owns, and the young son goes off and squanders it on all sorts of ridiculous things. All along, the elder brother's at home doing what the elder brother's supposed to do, taking care of business. The father pines away, though, for the lost son. Hard times come on the prodigal, who eventually decides to come home again after these dire straits. And when he comes home, he finds a father's welcome. Reinstates him, not only as an heir, but as a son. And Nouwen argues that each of us are ultimately called to grow up into the role of the father. Tim Keller, who we've been doing some studies with, in fact we're doing a study right now on, does the prodigal son and then talks about the presence of the elder brother. Remember how the story turns at the end? The elder brother comes back and goes, I'm going to welcome this kid back. He's so obnoxious, I can't believe. Did you see what he did to all of your money, therefore my money? And he won't welcome him back. And Tim Keller says, you're the older brother. Resenting those who mess up their lives and now want to come into your church to mess them up. And you've been here all along taking care of things and paying the bills and making the mortgage work. And we got this building on our own. How dare these people come here and mess it up? And we have to live into the role of a true elder brother, who Tim Keller says is the good shepherd himself, who does what the good elder brother should do, which is look for the prodigal. That's the role of a good elder brother, at least in this story. And that seems to be the direction that Jesus is pointing us as we look through this strange text about the good shepherd and then all these wolves that seem to appear. As he leads us from this pastoral imagery of the comfort of the presence of the good shepherd whose staff is over us, who leads us beside still waters, to this reality check about the wolves and his sacrificial mission. He charts then a path for us of discipleship, if you can picture it. One that begins with our awareness of our true relationship with God. We are God's. He is ours. Widening to living in solidarity with others. Yes, He has other flocks besides your Westlake New Hope Lutheran. Folks beyond these doors that He's concerned about. He said, He loved the world, not just New Hope Lutheran or the church. He's in love with the world. And finally, to claim the whole self as God's. We do well to remember again Peter, who so far has looked pretty bad and shabby in our story, but at the end of John's Gospel, we remember him by the seashore after the resurrection. It's one of those stories that should come in Easter season, but we're not getting it yet. Peter has gone fishing. They've gone back to that which comforts them. You ever gone back? Fishing's for him, mine's a bowl of ice cream. He goes back to the comforting thing, fishing. And they catch some fish. And then John sees Jesus on the shore, and they get there. And they have breakfast with him. And then Peter and Jesus are alone. And do you remember the conversation? Jesus turns to Peter and says 3 times in 3 different ways, Simon, do you love me? Well, this is Peter who just denied Jesus 3 times. And 3 different times Peter reaffirms that indeed he loves Jesus. Do you remember what Jesus said 3 times to Peter? Feed my sheep. Tend my flock. Feed my sheep. For those of us who relate to the lug-headed disciple Peter, we should also receive this commission from Christ as His lug-headed followers, that He intends for us to be a shepherd like Him, not just for the flock of the church, but for the other flock, for all the lost sheep and all the scattered flocks for whom Christ also died. This is a shepherd whose love finds his expression in perfect solidarity with the sheep. And it's amazing. But to dwell in such love is not only to receive it, which we ought, but to become it. Also, the invitation of Christ to become one of His shepherds. For a world full of lost sheep, a world full of scattered flocks, inside the doors, and certainly beyond. I hope you can keep both things in mind today. The image that you are His and we have a shepherd, and the challenge and call to feed His sheep, to tend His flock, to be the shepherds that He needs you and me and this church and the church to be in the world today. Amen.